Great. I want to welcome everyone to tonight's session with myself and Tim and the power of us all working together. I'm going to say a prayer to get us started, and then I'm going to hand it over to Tim, and he's going to share a presentation with us. Lord, we just want to thank you for these ladies that have come tonight. We just ask you to speak through Tim and share with us everything we need to do about working in community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Man.
All right, Tim, it's all yours.
All right, I'm going
it.
to
I'll fix it so you can share your screen and
okay, that would be great.
Yep.
Let's see, let me find it here real quick. Give me just a second to get it.
No problem.
All right, there we go. So I want to talk about the power of writing in community. Hey, first of all, I'm excited for all of us to gather tonight. I think actually what I'm going to talk about is exactly what we're doing, partly. But just to talk about our role as writers and authors, especially kingdom writers, and it's more than just a gig to make a little extra side money. It's more than just a career to make a living. It's a calling to make a difference. And so somehow we have to we need to figure this thing out because it's an incredible opportunity to influence people around the world to bear fruit, kingdom fruit that last. And Jesus said in John 15 that it brings God glory when we bear much fruit. And so therefore we want to be effective in what we're doing, which is a challenge. There's so many books written. This year there'll be about over 4 million books published. And so how in the world will anyone ever know that our little book is out there? If we want to make a difference, if we want the world to if we want to impact the world, how are we going to do it? And so Lana and I talked together a few months ago about the whole idea of the author hub and how it can make a difference. And then we talked about how we could pull writers together and kind of encourage one another. I know there's some great groups out there, great resources to do that, and maybe you're part of some groups like that. But we thought this could be just an encouragement to people as we think about our call to write. But it's not just a call to write, it's a call to be an effective writer, a fruit-bearing writer. And so that's really what I want to talk about. Now, we've probably all heard the axiom, it takes a village to raise a child. I got to tell you, I got a little problem with that. What it really takes is a family to raise a child. But I know that, like in my church, I think about, because I've got 6 children, by the way, I think about the impact other people had on my parenting, on my wife and I working together to raise our children. I think about the role of people in my church, because I am a pastor of a church here in Noonan. I think about the encouragement from others. I think about the role of Christian adult friends for my children and how meaningful that was. So in a sense, there is a community aspect to parenting. We probably all experience that. You have a Christian friend who, I know for me, it was interesting to watch my children as they hit, at first we were their hero. Whatever we said was good and right and perfect, and they respected it and thought it was awesome, and we were the experts. Somewhere around age 12 or 13, they became the experts and we became the idiots, or maybe it was 14. I don't know exactly what age it happened, but somewhere shifts began to happen and they began listening to their peers a little more. And what we found to be a great resource was community, and especially adult Christian friends. And they would have friendships with certain adults in our church who would many times say the same thing we're saying, but my kids would listen. And so the idea of the community around us really made a difference in our parenting. I think the same thing is true in writing, that there is great power in writing in community. And I want to talk about that for just a few minutes. We met, I can't remember, Lana, when that was. We met last time. It was like 2 months ago or something like that, wasn't it?
I think so.
I know the last time I was right about to launch these two books. It was crazy. I
Yeah.
did them both at the same time, but I
Yeah.
did that, the New Every Morning devotional, and my fiction I write under a pen name, The Long Way Home. Actually, it's my first novel, but I did a second edition and I relaunched it. And I'll say that I think for my devotional, I'm a little disappointed with my launch. I need to go back and kind of evaluate it and say, what should I have done differently? What can I do differently? And I hope that we all do that. Part of the process of being effective in our writing is to say what went well, what didn't go so well, what am I going to change next time around? How can I do a better job? I felt like here's a big negative that I'm for sure is one takeaway. I launched two books at the same time. That is really dumb. I'm not sure why I decided that was such a great idea. Months ago when I planned my writing schedule, I don't know why I thought I could launch two books about the same time. The reason I did that is because the devotional was to coincide with a preaching series that I was to do on God's mercy, and so that calendar kind of scheduled when that book would come out. The novel, of course, I write it under a pen name, and it's not even connected to who I am. And most people who read those books don't know who I am. But um, I had written that a long time ago. I finished the rewrite months ahead of time. But anyway, it just takes a lot of energy to launch a book. Um, I feel like they were okay. I've had some success with it. I'll be happy to share some of that if you want me to do that later on, some of the things that I did. Um, and I continue to have sales from that launch. But those are two of my newest ones. I'll show you I don't know if I can say it's my biggest flop, but it was a pretty big flop. Whoops, there's my websites, by the way, if you want. This was a pretty big flop for me. The next bestseller, Book Marketing for Success. I wrote that because when I speak at conferences, I tell writers that if you want to be a successful writer, you've got to be an effective marketer. And I hate marketing, and I had to learn how to market. I had to figure it all out. Um, and so I decided to write a book that I could share with writers on kind of marketing 101. Here's some basics. Here's some things that you can do. And so I put that together. The reason that I think it was kind of a flop, a little bit of a flop, especially from the launch. Oops. I released that book on, I think it was like March 10th, and the world 2020, and the world shut down March 12th with COVID. So
Yeah.
that was a pretty big disappointment. I had lined up a bunch of speaking engagements and different things, and all of that was canceled. Everything just stopped, and all of the money I spent, because I'd spent a good bit of money to promote that, and all of that was just totally wasted. So that was a little bit of a disappointment. I think another reason that this book is probably not as effective as some of my other ones, my audience is really not authors. I write Christian living, Bible study, devotionals, also write under my pen name, um, clean and wholesome romantic suspense. So that's my audience. My audience is really not writers. So I think that's another thing. So like my newsletter list is primarily people in those genres, and it's not really a list of authors. Um, but anyway, those are some things that I've got going on. I still kind of work at marketing, and I say to me, it's hard to market a book to authors. Like all of my avenues for marketing, like when you advertise to a certain group, um, it's difficult to say I want to market this to just writers. You got to really have a unique um, advertising model to be able to do that. But anyway, I've got several books. I've written 16, and those are three of them. But let's talk for a minute about the necessity of writing in community. I really believe it is a necessity because, frankly, we need each other. We need each other for a lot of reasons, for a lot of things. Ecclesiastes chapter 4, verse 9 says, Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. The scripture says that. It is interesting if you think way back in Genesis, God looked at Adam and he said, "It's not good for you to be alone, so I'm going to make a helper suitable for you." That's really a great concept, what God told Adam in the garden that time. I'm going to make a helper that's suitable. It's a helper that fits your gaps, that fills your gaps. And what God pointed out in that statement is that he made Adam on purpose with gaps. It's not like God was like, "Oh no, I messed up. I made a human being who has gaps." He made Adam with gaps on purpose so that he would need community to fill his life, to fulfill his life, and to help him. He wanted Adam to need relationships. So I think that's a big part of it. And so I think that the same is true for all of us. He made us with a basic need for community, to connect with each other, to work together. I think it's significant that God calls his church his body. Just the imagery of a body is an image of community, of components, of parts working together. Because the body is so fascinating with all the unique individual parts and how all these parts function well together. For example, the eye is made up of 7 different components. And all those components have to function together or we don't see well. Our hand is made up of 27 different bones, and all of that has to all work together. And that doesn't include all the other stuff that works together to make us be able to do what we do. And so it's interesting that God said the church will be called a body, the body of Christ, because it is a picture of the community aspect that we share together as believers, as part of God's children. Now, I know that a lot of writers are introverts by nature and maybe loners. I just wonder, out of us, how many of us would say, "I am an introvert. I function best when I am alone, and I could just be alone most of the time." I mean, how many of you ladies would say that's true about you? Or do you find yourself to be an extrovert? Are you outgoing and kind of life of the party? How would you describe yourself?
And you can unmute
So,
yourself and describe yourself.
Yeah, I'd say in the middle. It depends on maybe on the setting.
yeah.
I think maybe in my work setting, I'm more of an extrovert because I have to be.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it really just depends.
Yeah. What about you, Jessica?
I would just say I'm more of an introvert, especially when it comes to this whole writing situation. But like on my job, just like the other young lady was saying, I'm more of an extrovert because I'm a teacher, so I'm kind of forced to, you know, take on that role of speaking and doing all the other stuff that comes along with teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Mandy? Would you say you're introvert or extrovert? Introvert, extrovert. Yeah, she'll send us a text with that in just a minute. I can tell you that all the personality studies that I've done, as a matter of fact, I'm certified through Taylor Johnson temperament analysis and Prepare and Rich I use in counseling. There seems to be 2 aspects of our personality. There's like the real us, and there's the us that people think we are. It's almost like this public persona that we know we need to present, and then there's the real us inside. I know for me, I'm an introvert, but I pastor a church. I get up in front of hundreds of people and preach all the time, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with preaching, and I'm fine with interacting with people and speaking at conferences, and I can tell jokes and I can talk to people and I can do whatever. I do what I have to do, but I know that my unique DNA, I love being alone. I love thinking. I love writing. I love studying. I love doing research. I love some of my favorite times of the years when I go off backpacking. I hike 2 weeks on that trail every year. Except this year I can't because I had a tree fall through a house and I got to go fix it and skip my backpacking. So that's killing me. But I love that. I hike alone. I just hike through the mountains. I'm trying to hike the whole Appalachian Trail. I've made it to middle of Vermont. I'm a scuba diver, so I scuba dive. It's not like I have a conversation while I'm underwater. Every year I take a retreat. I do a spiritual retreat to do planning and working. I do some writing on that retreat as well. I do sermon planning. I love that time. I'm all alone. It's me and God, and it's awesome. So I love being alone. I thrive off of that. And I think a lot of writers are introverts. Every now and then you'll come across one that is very extrovert, very out there. But one reason I think so many of us are introverts is because if you're going to write books, you got to spend a lot of time researching, thinking, writing, studying. You know, if that's not your passion, if you don't really enjoy that, it's pretty tough to be a writer. Now, I don't want to say
Yeah.
you can't be a writer if you're an introvert. Do you think that's true? I think extroverts can be writers, obviously, and can be very successful. But I do think there's got to be this passion or love of being alone, and working and researching and so forth. However, if we're going to be effective, if we're really going to bear fruit, even if we're introverts, we've got to understand the design of community and the need for community that God placed in all of our hearts. That there is a wiring that makes that possible. Now, one word that we're going to talk about or think about is the word synergy. The word synergy, it actually comes from a Greek word. It's a compound word. If you notice the first part in our English language, we would spell it S-U-N, soon. It means with, or you could say together. And the second half, ergia, is actually, you can get our word energy from it. It means the working. And so it's the idea, it's a compound word saying working together. And so the word synergy, if you just want a good definition, the cooperative working together of two or more people or organizations when their combined effect is greater than the sum of their individual efforts. Now, I think there's two aspects to this definition that's really important. Obviously, the first one is two or more people working together. Synergy literally means that, multiple people working together. But notice the second part of that definition. This is really big. Their combined effect is greater than the sum of their individual efforts. What that means is, of course, here's just all the different words that you could use to talk about synergy, but look at this mathematical equation. We think of 1 + 1 = 2. That's good math, right? But synergy is actually 1 + 1 = maybe 5. So there's a greater sum, there's a greater consequence of those two people working together. So it's not just addition, but it's multiplication. And so I want you to think about the power of that as it relates to us as writers. When God says that it brings him glory for us to bear much fruit would be synergy. It would be the synergistic effect of writers working together in community with other writers so that we can be more effective, so that we can bear more fruit, so that our books have a wider reach as we desire to spread our message around the world. John Maxwell, if you're familiar with him, he's writes a bunch of books on leadership and stuff. He was talking about, of course, teamwork. I want you to think about this in the context of writing. Here's his quote. I forget what book this came from, but he says, "One is too small a number to achieve greatness. Leaders who fail to promote teamwork undermine their own potential and erode the best efforts of the people with whom they work. To accomplish anything significant, leaders must learn to link up with others." Now, that's true for leadership. I pastor a medium-sized church. I've got 4 other full-time pastors who work with me, and we have all kind of teams in our church. So we understand the power of synergy and how important it is for us to develop teamwork in our church. Think about this quote as if it were written to writers. Okay, one is too small a number to achieve greatness. Now, can I just tell you that as Christian writers, our goal really is not our greatness. Our goal is to promote God's greatness. We want to make sure the world knows who God is. But still, one is too small of a number. If our goal is God's glory, which it is, if our goal is spiritual fruit around the world, which it is, we want more fruit for God's glory because that brings him glory. Then one's too small a number, according to Maxwell. Let's pretend like instead of leaders who fail to promote teamwork, let's say writers who fail to promote teamwork undermine their own potential and erode the best efforts of the people with whom they work. To accomplish anything significant, writers must learn to link up with others. And I think that's true. I think that's a true statement. I've experienced that in my life, and I can tell you I am a loner. I am an introvert. I love being alone and all those things. But I've learned that I am best when I am working in teamwork with other people. There are some things we can do alone, but we can do many things with others. So here's the question: whom would we consider the basic members of our writing community? If we're talking about writing in community, what am I talking about? Who's a part of that community, and how am I supposed to develop it? Here's just a few basic thoughts. First would be editors, right? You can't write a book without having some editors to help you. And by the way, I'll be happy to email you guys this PowerPoint if you'd like to have that. You can maybe reach out to me, send me an email or something, and then I'll respond back. I'll give you my email address again at the end. But editors, can I just tell you, I have a publishing company also, and I am amazed at the number of people that I work with. And I have certain requirements before I will work with an author on publishing their book, and I am amazed at the number who want to balk at going through the editing process with a professional editor. It's kind of shocking, because I can say I have a doctorate degree, and to finish my doctoral program, it was a research degree, a writing degree, did tons of writing. We had to be very proficient at a writing style. We used Turabian. I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I use Chicago Manual Style now as a writer, as my style guide. But we used Turabian. And back then, if you made an A was 96 to 100, a B was 90 to 95. If you made lower than a B, you didn't get credit. So it's pretty high standards. And so it didn't take much to mess up a paper and not score high enough, So if you're going to make A's or B's, you had to be pretty good at Turabian. So can I just tell you that I was pretty good at Turabian. I feel pretty good about my grammar and my writing and all that. But I just tell you, if I don't have an editor, I'm going to be a flop. I'm going to make horrible decisions. Sometimes as I'm writing along, my mind's just not on it, or I just say something dumb. I mean, I grew up in the South, and so I've got my natural learning that happened as a kid. Sometimes that shows up, and I'll write a word, and I know good and well that's not proper. Later, when I go back and read, I'm like, what was I thinking when I wrote that word? Or I misspell something, or whatever. I can make such dumb mistakes, and I feel like I'm pretty proficient. So when I have people say, "Oh, I don't need an editor. I'm really good with grammar," I want to say I'm an expert in grammar, and if I don't have an editor, my book's going to be a flop. And so I know that to be true. I know I need professional editors. And can I just say that in the secular world, secular writers, professional secular writers, pay thousands of dollars to editors so that they can sell books and make money. And they would not put their book on the market without paying thousands of dollars to editors. Now, it may be the publishing company doing it, but whoever's doing it, they put out a lot of money to make sure it's edited properly and that it's the best they can do so that they can make money. That's their goal. And maybe they have some higher goals, high goals as well. But let's face it, in the secular world, the bottom line is the bottom line. As Christian writers, our bottom line is not money. If it is, we probably need to get out of it. Our bottom line is higher than money. It's greater than money. It's spiritual fruit that lasts. It's people being saved. It's marriages being restored. It's families being helped. It's lives being changed. However we want to word our mission, I feel like it's more important than money. And so if secular people pay thousands of dollars to get an excellent product, doesn't our God deserve an excellent effort on our part? And so I think it's worth spending the money on editing. For me personally, I have 2 professional editors that I use. Now that means I spend, $1,000 to $1,500 per book to have it edited when it goes through that kind of process. But it's worth it because my message is worth it. It's worth that effort to make sure that I have an excellent product at the end. So editors have to be a part of your writing community. Now, there's different kind of editors. Maybe you ladies could share your experiences with editors, and maybe I'm singing or preaching to the choir, because we all use editors. Maybe you got that down pat. I've never used a developmental editor. Maybe some of you have, and maybe you can give some great insight on the value of that. I've considered it, especially with my fiction. And I might do that one of these days. A developmental editor would be someone you go to early who reads your early goings, your early manuscript, and helps you put together the big picture concepts, and they'll help you develop the idea a little bit. They're not so focused on the details, the nuts and bolts. They're really more focused on the big picture, the 30,000-foot view. And then there would be line editors. To me, I have a hard time distinguishing the difference between a line editor and a copy editor. Maybe you guys know a good distinction of that. To me, they seem very, very similar. They are kind of deep in the weeds. They're looking at grammar. They're going line by line, word by word, helping you to really make sure it's right. I have the first editor that I use is sort of a mixture of developmental, line, and copy. He does sort of all of that, more line and copy than developmental, but he does help me with big picture a little bit. He helps me remove verbosity, because I'm just telling you, I'm a preacher, so I can be a little too verbose, right? Too many words. And so he helps me cut all that out. He helps me tighten it up a little bit. So he's more than just a line editor. He's a little broader than that. But I found him to be incredibly valuable to me in the process. So developmental editing, line editing, copy editing, and then you could put a proofreader in there. Proofreading, you can do that in other ways. What I do is, after mine goes through the editing process, I have beta readers also, which I'll talk about in a second. But after my final editor, who is, she has a master's degree in English, she's worked for publishing companies and journalists. So she goes through and makes sure there's no grammar mistakes and any other things that she finds. But then I have 3 people that are just an important part of my ministry. They love helping me be the best I can be, and so they'll read my manuscripts when I'm ready to go to print. They'll be my final read and make sure there's no mistakes. So that would be my proofreader. So editors have got to be an important part of our writing community. I'll show you all these, and then you can jump in and share any thoughts about this particular slide. The second group I'm going to call beta readers. I usually use these before before I send it to my second editor. So after I get it back from my first editor and I make all the changes, then I'll have some people, maybe they're my readers, maybe they're on my newsletter list, maybe they're in my church, people who are just willing to help me. And they get to read the book first. They get it for free, and they get to see it with some of its warts still there, because it's going to go through one more edit before it's ready for publication. But I'll send it to them, maybe 2 or 3 different people. Could be more than that. But I get their input. I get their thoughts. What did you think about this? I can tell you my next novel that I just got most of it back from my first editor, and I'm trying to put the finishing touches on that and go through what he's recommended. But it's a little different than my first. I wrote 7 books in that first series. They are it's romantic suspense. It's got a lot of action, bad guys, scuba diving, treasure hunting. So I didn't totally turn in my mail card to write romance. So I've got some bad guys and some guns and some all that kind of stuff. So, but this next book, this next series, is kind of different. It's still romantic suspense, but it's different. It doesn't have quite as much action and bad guys and stuff. There's some other elements to it. And so I'm curious what my beta readers are going to say about this, because they've read all my other stuff. So what are they going to say when they read this new series and says, this is really different? So I'm really anxious to hear their thoughts, because I'm going to, before I release this new one, I'm going to write 2 more in that series, and I'm going to do a rapid release next year of all 3 of them, like 6 weeks apart, something like that. And so beta readers, just to few people just to read through it. They're not necessarily professional editors, but they like your genre and they read in your genre. And so they can give you great input. The third group that I think needs to be in your writing community is designers and graphic artists. Now, you may be able to design your own book if you self-publish. Make sure you're good at it. You don't want your book to look self-published. When I first started this, I don't want to go into all my journey, but I was dealing with professional publishers, traditional publishers, and I opted to go the self-publishing route. And when I opted to do that, one of my goals was to make sure that when someone picks up my book, they don't look at it and think, now that's a self-published book. I didn't want it to look self-published. I wanted it to be as professional as possible. And so I had to make sure I could design the interior so that it looks professional. And if I can't do that, I need to pay somebody to do it. And then the second one, the graphic artist, I'm really thinking more of cover design. It's very easy. Maybe it's not as easy now as it was back when I first started. When I first started, I could go on Amazon and I could pick out the books that were self-published. I mean, it was a dead giveaway. The covers, the font choices, it was very easy to see a self-published book. Because the thing is, most people are not graphic artists. And just because they can use some sort of graphics program on their computer does not mean they have an eye for it or that they have an ability to really put something well together. Sometimes the cover doesn't fit the genre or, whatever. So I think we need, unless you're a professional graphic artist yourself, it's worth paying the money to do it. I didn't think about showing you the two different. I think maybe I did this last time. I can't remember. When I did the second edition of my first 3 novels, I went to a cover design company to design the cover for me, and it cost me $200, but it was worth it, I think. My first cover I did myself. And I'm really pretty good with graphics, but I'm not really a graphic artist. The reason I did it myself is because I really thought I was writing one book and I would be done. I never intended to be a novelist. That was not my ambition. I barely even read novels at the time. So I thought, I just did it to raise money for my daughter. She was going on a mission trip and I wanted to help her. And so I designed it myself. And after that first one, actually quite successful. So I thought, well, I'll just keep designing them myself. And so after I did all 6 in that book series, I got to looking at them and they looked like romance novels, but it did not look like suspense novels. So it did not reflect my genre. And so because of that, I wanted to go back when I did the second edition. I wanted to change the cover so it looked like romantic suspense. And so I decided to hire a professional, and I feel like they did a much better job than I could have or that I had really the time to do. So anyway, graphic artists, I just encourage people to do this. As Christian writers, our mission is to produce a book that will make a difference, that will bear kingdom fruit. And so therefore it is worth spending $200 or whatever you got to spend to get a good cover on your book. The company that I used to do this last one is called 100covers.com. I mean, it's 100 covers, the number 100. And you work with them. If you don't like their first take, and I didn't, I made some significant changes. And they were great with that. And we came out with something that I really like. So far, I've been very satisfied with them. I know there's some other cover design people out there, experiment with it. Maybe I've got some input on that with people that you've used or how you've done it, or maybe you've done a traditional route and you don't even have to think about cover design because your publisher deals with that. But that needs to be part of your writing community. Now, with some thought, you could add some additional members to this writing community. For example, and maybe you're part of something like this, a critique group or a writing partner. I have both. Or have had both in the past. I've got a writing partner with whom I meet probably twice a month now. I have been in critique groups where we share bits and pieces. I'm part of a group here in Noonan, and I can do that. I can meet on a Monday night. We share a chapter, and everybody reads each other's chapter and provides input. A critique group can be very valuable. Now, I used to tell you, as writers, we cannot wear our feelings on our sleeves. We've got to be willing to take criticism. We want to be better, right? Iron sharpens iron. So we want to be sharpened. We want to have the best product that we can have. And so we got to be able to take people's criticism, not personally, but to say they're really trying to help me be better. Now, granted, there's every now and then you'll have somebody in a critique group that's got issues. Don't we all have issues, right? And so, but anyway, critique group is really valuable. And let me tell you something I'm about to explore. I've never done this before, but I'm thinking about putting together a group of people, maybe 4 or 5 people, who are really creative, and have a brainstorming session with them about a novel that I'm working on. I've got book 1 finished. I've got book 2. I know where I'm going with that. Book 3 is a little out there still, and I thought about putting together a brainstorming team to help me brainstorm ideas for book 3. So I think that could be a pretty cool team. Now, can we just stop for a second and just talk about this suggestion of a team? I think we'll see some more team members here in a few minutes, but what are your thoughts about this list? Do you have any of these in your own writing ministry? What's been your experience with this in the past? What are your thoughts about this community suggestion that I've promoted?
I have a cover lady that has done most of all my covers. I am, I feel like, pretty good at doing some of my covers, especially for the kids' books that I do, because I illustrate them myself. But I also now, like you're working on the brainstorming team, I'm working on trying to get working on the part for beta readers. I'm working on trying to gain some beta readers, and I do have an editor that I really love that does all my editing.
That's excellent. Anybody else? Anybody else have any of these team members in your team? Or what are your thoughts about, or is there, you think there's somebody that we could add to the team that I don't have on the list?
Mandy says she has a great critique group.
I think that can be invaluable, or very valuable. I think just to meet with people, reading through your stuff, giving their input. I can tell you, as a pastor, I'm critiqued every Sunday when I preach by hundreds of people. So everybody has an opinion about my sermon, and so I've had to learn through the years. Don't take it personal, even if they meant it personal. Just get over it. It's not a big deal.
Karen has something.
Oh, I just said I have friend editors. They're friends. They're not professional, but some of them are pretty critiquey. And I'm too new to have too much. I have a published low content book, a coloring book, but not a. But even that was like creating the coloring book was fun. And then I sent it to my cousin who does a lot of coloring, and she was sending me back things like the butterflies are too small and different things. So there was a lot of editing on coloring pages.
Yeah, who would have thought about that, right?
Finished, yeah, and I thought I was finished, and I sent it to somebody else. It has some devotional pages to it, and she said, all of your boxes are going to just turn out real light gray like this. So I had to go change two boxes on every page for like 25 pages to fix those boxes. So even low content stuff gets edited. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. Anybody else? Well, we'll add some more to this team as we go. Oh, I did add this one. I forgot about that. What role can your readers play as a part of your community, your writing community? I've experimented with this, and I think it can be very powerful. For example, I wrote a book on Psalms. Actually, it wasn't my first nonfiction book I wrote, but my first nonfiction book I wrote was with a publisher. They were dealing with it. And so I wrote another book while I was jumping through all their hoops. I wrote a book on Psalms for my congregation. And when I got ready to, I was putting it together, and I really did this more for marketing, but it made me think about how this could be a powerful resource. I asked people on Facebook, I said, I'm working on a book on Psalms. What's your favorite Psalm and why is it your favorite? And so people began to share. And I got to thinking about, that could be a great writing resource if you involve your readings with a questionnaire, put a little questionnaire out. I've also used it on cover design on that devotional book that I just showed you, the New Every Morning. That cover was not my first choice. My first choice was totally different. And I put it out there to readers and ask, what cover do you think? And I started doing research on current trends in covers, and I found that of the top 100 best-selling books on Amazon and devotionals, none of them had a picture on it. Like, my idea was to have a beautiful picture with some words and whatever. None of the current books had a beautiful picture. They were all font focused, maybe creative fonts, but it was more of a font on a plain background. So anyway, I involved my readers to get their input on that. I think that could be useful even as you write. Like, you can involve your readers in the process, and that's actually a great marketing ploy as well, because then when your book comes out, your readers feel like they had a part in that. They contributed. They might see some of their creativity show up in your book, or whatever. So I think readers can play a big role in that. Maybe you could explore that, or I could explore it some as well. But let's talk about the aspects of writing a community. What is involved in that? And let me just highlight it in just a few brief points. First, in the writing area, I mentioned having a writing team. If I'm going to write by myself, I like to say, just because you self-publish doesn't mean you publish by yourself. And so I want to have this team around me. We just talked a lot about that. Another aspect of writing in community is co-writing. I'm curious if you've ever done that. I've only done it once. It was not a great experience. It was very difficult for me because I am an introvert. I'm a loner. I spend time in my study all the time by myself, writing sermons, doing whatever. And so writing a book together with somebody else was a bit of a trick. And that somebody else is my brother. My older brother and I have a ministry. We're consultants with a church health organization. And so we wrote a Bible study together that we use in our consulting. And so we did it together, and that was just pretty tricky. It was pretty hard. And he's my brother. So writing with somebody, I'd have to really work at that probably to get better at it. But I think that's certainly one way to do it. Another way is multiple author publications. I've really considered this here in our area. I think one problem with the church these days is that we draw dark lines around ourselves and don't interact with other churches outside of our walls. And I think that's a problem. Just because my theology might be a little different than your theology, if you call Jesus Lord and I call Jesus Lord, we're on the same team. We're in the same family. Even though we may have a little nuance of theology that's a little different. For example, I'm not Calvinist. You might be Calvinist, but we can still work together for the cause of Christ. You might be charismatic. I'm not. We can still work together as the body of Christ. So I thought a cool thing to do would be to connect with some of the larger churches in my community, the pastors, and say, let's write a book together. Let's pick a topic and we all write a chapter and we'll publish it. And we'll all do this sermon series at the same time on the same topics. And, we're all preaching our own sermons, but we have this book as a resource to go along with this series. And all the people in our churches will be working together. And if I did that with the larger churches in my community, we would have several thousand people in our community, all reading the same book, all hearing the same sermon topics, maybe interacting at work about it or whatever. I think it could be a very powerful thing. So that would be
I think
multiple.
that's awesome.
I think it'd be neat if we can do it, and I'm going to work on that. I think it would be an awesome thing to do, and not be just a book written by the Baptists, but a book written by all of us as we work together. So we'll see how that goes. So that would be
I would love to hear
multiple
testimony
authors.
on that.
What's that?
I said I would love to hear testimony on that. I would like to see that happen
I'll work
in
on
my
that. I'll let you
community.
know. I think it could be pretty
Yeah.
cool, and I think you know, like these other guys, some of them are going to be traditionally published. And so they have no clue about how to actually publish a book. I have a publishing company, so I can do that. I can publish the book. I've got the resources to pull that off. If you self-publish, you've jumped through those hoops, and so that might be easier for you. If not, I'll help you figure it out. If you wanted to get 10 pastors in your community to buy into that idea, now I can tell you, I like to tell pastors, if you can write a sermon, you can write a book. I do believe that's true. It might not be a good book, but I believe you can write a book. So you may want to be selective on what pastors you pick if you want it to be a good book. But anyway, I think that it's a great idea. And so I think every community could do that. Even if it's going to go for sale on Amazon. Let's say nobody buys it off of Amazon, but just your community buys it. I consider it a success. When I wrote my first book on Psalms, my goal was to write it for my congregation for a sermon series. I was preaching on Psalms. It didn't matter to me if anyone ever bought it off of Amazon. I really just published it for my church. So I'll sell a few hundred copies and done. Success. That's all that matters. I wrote it for my church. Well, it did happen to sell a lot on Amazon, but that was not my objective. My objective was my congregation, and I'd be just happy as pie if that's all that, you know, ever happened. So if a community put a book together like that and published it, and all the churches in your community benefited from it, if not a single person bought it off of Amazon in the future, who cares? Your community benefited, all your churches benefited from it. And it could be, I think it could be very powerful. And it'd be pretty cool for all those pastors to work together on a joint project like that. So that's multiple author publication. Now you can do the same thing in your writing, whatever kind of writing you do. For example, Lana put together a devotional by several of us. I have a chapter in it, and several different authors have chapters in that devotional. You can get it for free. I assume it's still free, Lana, is that right?
Yes, it is.
Yep, so it's a devotional and it's multiple authors, and it's out there. We're also, another idea on writing in community is collaborating in a collection or a box set. Lana is helping me with that right now. She's helping me connect with some other authors who are romantic suspense authors, and we're going to do a box set of 3 different books. So my book 1 of my novel, of my series, will be in there, and there's 2 other authors. Their books will be in there. And so we'll sell that book as a digital book for 99 cents. So what a bargain to get 3 books for 99 cents. But you can see the advantage of that is, like, I've got 6 more books after that one. And so if you read book 1 out of that box set that Lana's going to sell and you like it, then you're going to go to read book 2 and book 3 and book 4 and book 5 and book 6 and book 7. So we're working on that. Lana's helping me with that. And that's something that she and I've talked about could be a great advantage of the Author Hub ministry, is that she can be a resource to connect authors on collaborating in some projects. So writing, that's one aspect of writing community, actually using all these ideas. Another is not just writing, but also learning. I can tell you I've learned so much from other writers. And I could easily go into a room and be a fly on the wall and just sit on the sidelines, but networking with other writers, there's just great power in it. And if we can all just have conversation together, learning, I can learn from you, you can learn from me. We're all on different journeys, and I think God can use that. Like I said a minute ago, iron sharpens iron. I can tell you, when I decided to self-publish my first book, I didn't know how to do that. And so I went online, I started researching, and that's how I came across Shelley Hitz, which is how Lana and I met, is through Shelley's ministry. Shelley became my mentor in the early days. And her stuff is excellent. I highly recommend Author Audience Academy. Sorry, it's not called that anymore.
Christian Book Academy.
Christian Book Academy. She changed the name. I highly recommend it. It's a great, great program. In 2014, I attended my first writers conference in Colorado. I loved it. First, to hang out with people like me we're a little crazy, a little out there sometimes, but we all speak the same language, and we're all working on similar projects. And so writers conferences are huge. I go every year to the Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference at Ridgecrest, North Carolina. and it is excellent. It's probably the largest Christian writers conference in America, and I highly, highly recommend it. So learning from others by networking, hanging out. We can also learn from others by reading what others are writing about writing, reading other books. And I know that writers have to be readers. We have to read. We need to read what other people are writing in our genre. We need to read what other people are writing about how to write. Read about the craft, improve myself. I can tell you my first novel was terrible because I'd never written a novel before. And I didn't know what I was doing. It's crazy that I even thought I could write a novel. I don't even know what I was thinking. But I spent years working on the craft, getting better, learning how to write fiction. And so when I did this second edition, it is way better than the first time around. And it's because I learned, I read a lot. I went to classes. I read books on the craft of marketing and the craft of writing fiction. And then another area of learning is that the issue of marketing. Most writers do not enjoy marketing. This was an aha moment for me because, see, I set a goal when I was a teenager. I had a goal of writing 10 books in my life. And so when my first book came out and I held it in my hand, I was like, oh, this is my first book. I mean, it felt so good, to have my first book in my hand. My goal was to write 10 books, and here's my first one. But it hit me as I was holding that book, looking at my name. My goal should not have been to write 10 books. My goal should have been to write 10 books that people read. There's a difference.
Yeah.
I was holding that book in my hand and nobody even knew it existed. And so I said, all right, what do I do? I got to figure out this marketing piece. And so what did I do? I went back to Shelley Hitz and I started reading her stuff on book marketing and reading a bunch of other people's stuff on how to market your books. I eventually signed up for Mark Dawson's program on the self-publishing formula, which I highly recommend. It's like the Cadillac, but I highly recommend it. I did some Udemy, is that how you pronounce that? Udemy video classes.
Yeah.
I did the Fiction Marketing Academy. I mean, I've done all kinds of stuff, listening to podcasts. So the whole idea of writing in community means that I'm learning in community, learning from other writers. And here's what I know about Christian writers. We all love helping each other because we realize we're brothers and sisters in Christ and we want to help each other. And so learning, I think, is really important. I'll tell you another aspect of writing in community. Oops, I forgot to do the learning. There's learning, but here's the next one: personal growth and goals. This is so big in community that we have a plan for personal growth, and we have goals, and we involve each other in that process. Let me just share a few thoughts, and I realize we better hurry because I have no idea how long we're supposed to go, Lana. But here's a quote. I love this quote by Abraham Lincoln. The best way to predict the future is to create it. It's really a great thought. What do I want the future to be like? What do I sense God wanting me to do in my writing ministry? I got to figure that out. What does the end look like? And so then let me back up and figure out the steps I need to take so that end becomes a reality. There's some great power in writing down our goals. Here's a couple of thoughts about that. This is amazing to me that only 3% of Americans set goals and only 1% of them write them down. Interesting. So hold on to that. 3% of us set goals, 1% of us actually write them down. But look at these other facts related to it. Dr. Gail Matthews said that you are 42% more likely to achieve your goals just by writing them down. 42%. That's pretty good odds. Oops, I misspelled a word there. Just, not J-U-B-T. Just by writing them down, you're 42% more likely to achieve your goal. That's astonishing. So why would we not make goals for our writing? Why would we not write them down? That makes sense. Here's another statistic to add to that. Keeping a journal increases the chances of accomplishing our goals by 20%. So if we write down our goal and then keep a journal of our progress as we're working on that goal, we have a 20% greater chance of accomplishing that goal. So the first one was the 42% more likely. But now we're going to increase that. As we journal our progress, we're going to have a 20% greater chance of doing it. Now look at this. If I'm understanding what this dreammaker.com, and that is 2 R's, by the way, on that website, that individuals who set time-bound objectives and start weekly progress reporting encourage peers to achieve 40% more than those who did not. Now, this has another element to it. So it's not only setting goals and writing them down, but it's involving others in the process. As I'm reporting to my peers, my writing partner, my writing group, my accountability group, I report how things are going. I have 40% more success than those who don't report to their peers. So writing down a goal, journaling about my progress, and talking with others about those goals and that progress or lack of it is going to help me be a greater success. And so those are really, really important. And you can see how the community aspect falls into that I don't want to just ride out here in a bubble all by myself. I want to, even though I'm an introvert, I want to connect with other people, share my goals, and encourage them. They encourage me. We work together. So writing in community related to personal growth and goals is big time important. And then here's one final thing is marketing. The aspect of writing in community means that we help each other market. I can tell you that I'm a better marketer when I market with other people because there's greater success. There's multiplication instead of just addition. So just consider the power of synergy in marketing as we work together. So if you want to talk about the power of community for writers, you've got to include the power of working together to promote our books. And so like, let's say, and frankly, that's what Lana's doing with Author Hub. She's helping authors promote our books. So let's say that I'm going to promote my book, which I am, in the next June edition in Author Hub. And let's say there's, I don't know how many authors, what do you think, Lana, 30, 25 authors marketing their books in the next edition, 30 authors?
Well, there's about close to 62 authors that have
Whoa.
book listed.
There you go, 62, imagine that. Okay, so all 62 of us have our books in there, and let's assume that we all have email lists, which we should. I can just tell you that's the greatest marketing resource that we can have, is to develop an email list, a newsletter list. We can talk about that sometime. We talked about it last time a good bit, but we can talk more if y'all want to in the future, how to do that and why it's so important. Because it's, I can just tell you, every writer, every successful writer I know says that their newsletter list is the most important marketing weapon they have. So let's say we all have the email list. Maybe there's 500 on your list. Maybe there's 1,000. Maybe there's 5,000. However many you have on your list, and you send a newsletter out to them once a month. And let's say there's 62 authors in this next magazine that goes out. I could market my books to my list, and maybe there would ultimately be 1,000 people that will get that my book advertisement. But what if all 62 of us in that publication had 1,000 people on their list, and we all market it? Then not just 1,000 people saw the advertisement for my book, but 62,000 people saw it. So you can, obviously the synergistic effect of that could be very, very powerful if we can figure out how to work together.
Right.
Now that requires all of us being willing, one, to build an email list, two, to market everybody's book. Or let's say that Barbara has a new book coming out, and I'm going to put a newsletter out to all my people. And so I do a little blurb about Barbara's book. Here's a new book that my friend Barbara's written, and I make a few comments about it. Here's a link where you can get it on Amazon. Then suddenly, not only is she marketing it to her people, but I'm marketing it to my people for her. And then when my new book comes out, Barbara might tell her people about my book. And so we work together to help each other as Christian writers. Now, that does mean that we got to write good books. I don't want to market a book for somebody if it's really terrible, like they
Yeah.
didn't get it edited, it's just not done well. I think we got to do our best, but I think we're going to be more successful if we market in community. We can do that through newsletter swaps and all kinds of things, which we'll talk about that in just a second. And so aspects of writing in community, it's so very big. So we talked about the necessity of writing in community. We've talked about some aspects of writing in community. Here's a third thing, the advantages of writing in community. You're probably all familiar with this verse of scripture. I love it. Two are better than one because they have a good return for their labor. For if either of them falls, the one will lift up his companion. But woe to the one who falls when there is not another to lift him up. Furthermore, if two lie down together, they keep warm. But how can one be warm alone? And if one can overpower him who is alone, two can resist him. A cord of 3 strands is not quickly torn apart. Great passage of scripture that says we really need each other. There's some great advantages to writing in community. Why don't we just take a minute and unmute your microphones and just share some advantages. What would be some of those advantages of writing in community? I've spent a lot of time talking about various aspects of that, but what would be some of the positive takeaways, advantages to do that?
Well, let me go first there. I've just participated with Lana in my first writers retreat. And so, and I was virtual. There were some people there that were in person. There were others that were virtual. What it did for me was it brought some discipline because I was writing at the same time some other people were, and I was mostly editing and organizing, but we were all doing, and some of them were researching. That everybody wasn't like typing on the keys. They were doing different things about the writing, but we were all doing it at the same time. So there was some accountability and some, because I'm the extrovert that wants to just go have fun. And so I don't spend the hours just in an office just writing. So I have to really discipline myself to do that. It was encouraging just to be in community with other like-minded people who were doing a similar thing. Not that we were writing the same thing or even the same genre, maybe, but everybody was contributing. And then at the end of the day, you could read something that you wrote and someone could give feedback, And so it was good.
That's excellent. What other advantages of writing community, somebody?
I know I haven't been a part of any communities. I mean, I wrote my first book, and like I know I did have to get an editor, and then like I did find a designer to design my book cover. So that's a start.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. One thing in writing community is you have a sounding board. And so I think if we write in community, we end up with a better product. If we're willing to listen.
Yeah. Well, like Mandy, I hate to interrupt, but Mandy says she participates in a writers club online, and it gives her a set time to write, kind of like accountability.
Yeah, that's excellent. My partner that I meet with, he's in my church, and we meet together for breakfast twice a month to talk about a variety of things, but specifically writing. And we pick each other's brain on the whole creativity thing. Like he's writing it's a really creative book using different personalities. Each of his characters have different mental illnesses, and they're working together to solve some kind of crime. So it's really a very interesting take on things and very creative writing. And so his book has been born out of our conversations together about ideas and creative things. And so as we've worked together, I think he's had the synergistic advantage of my creativity and his creativity. And sometimes in that conversation, he thinks of ideas he wouldn't have thought of on his own. But maybe I said something that sparked something that turned into something else, you know. So I think added creativity, more eyes on a project, you know, you're going to hopefully catch flaws or problems or something's not working. I had somebody, one of my beta readers, she did such an incredible job. She caught some inconsistencies in my novel that, man, I just didn't catch at all. And when I went back and caught it, I'm like, whoa, that is so true. I wrote a book, I guess it was 2 years ago, called Following Jesus, a 21-day journey. It's a Bible study. And I included in the book a little allegory, kind of like Pilgrim's Progress, except my character was like hiking on the Appalachian Trail. And so I used that as an illustration of living the Christian life. And I had her in the early going in the book have a dog with her. And so I would tell a little piece of her story, and then I would do a Bible study on that particular topic that I illustrated with her story. And then after that little section, I would tell another little piece of her story. And then I would have a few Bible studies on that. And then I'd tell another piece of her story. Well, somewhere, maybe about the third piece of her story, I forgot she had a dog. And because I was not really writing a book about her story, I was doing a Bible study on these aspects. I just didn't think about it. And I had a reader contact me like a year after that book came out. I had a reader write me an email and said, "What happened to her dog?" I'm like, "Oh my goodness." So I went back in and I added her dog and I republished the book, you know, and fixed that little flaw. But it was such a blessing that someone had the nerve to do that, you know, and to help me out, you know, and it made the book better. So having more eyes on the project is just it's just so much better. All
Oh,
right. I know we
and well,
go ahead.
we have militia. I'm sorry, you're on my, you're not, you weren't exactly on my screen. Now you popped up. Do you have any thoughts and all that? You can unmute yourself.
Good night. I'm Melissa. I'm from Jamaica. And yes, I'm currently in a author CEO program. So I have a coach. And it was through that program where I found your author hub, and that's why I'm here.
That's all. Who is your coach?
Crystal Day. She's my
Yeah, I know.
publisher.
I know Christelle. She's a wonderful, wonderful friend.
So that's how I got here.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you if you knew her.
Yeah. So she's my coach. So
She's a wonderful person and a very gifted writer. Well, let me add one final thing. Some practical steps of writing in community. And none of this is rocket science, but you got to find a writing partner. I think that's invaluable. Kind of like what Militia was saying with her writing coach. So it could be a writing coach. It could be like my friend Paul Joseph, a writing partner. We don't write the same thing. We don't write books together, but we just meet and talk together about writing. And so I would say, if you don't have a writing partner, prayer partner, accountability partner, begin praying and ask God to help you find a friend who writes. You don't have to live in the same area. You may have never even met face to face. It was interesting. I was speaking at an online conference a while back, and I said something about recently getting an email from a writer in Washington State, I think it was. I forget where it was. And somebody at the conference was a writing partner with that woman in Washington State. They didn't know each other, but they were writing partners. They met together once a month online and they talked about writing. I thought that was pretty cool. So find a writing partner for encouragement, accountability, and so forth. Second, build a team for personal writing success. We talked about that already a lot tonight. So build your team, figure out who needs to be on it, and start building it. I'll tell you, my team has gotten better through the years. I've been writing now. I first started writing in 2009, I think. And so I've built my team and it's got better and better through the years. And so work on that. And then third, consider collaborating with other authors. Who can you collaborate with? think about that and the whole writing thing. Is there a way you can expand your writing ministry by writing with somebody else, by publishing something together? For one thing, if you do a book with other writers, let's say there's 10 writers and you're going to do 10 chapters, you only have to write one chapter, and everybody writes that one chapter, and that book comes out quick because you can write a chapter fairly quickly. So it won't have to take a lot of your time. You can focus on your other writing projects after you've written your one chapter. And so consider collaborating with others, but also consider collaborating with other authors in marketing. Think about that. How can you collaborate with other authors in marketing? Just this list right here of us in this group, we could say, hey, let's work on this together. For example, maybe you don't have a newsletter. Maybe those of us who have newsletters, we can help you figure out how to get that started. That's so important that you do that. If you do have a newsletter, maybe we could do a newsletter swap. So maybe you could tell your people in your list, hey, I've met a new friend online. His name is Tim Riordan. He writes Christian living, devotionals, Bible studies, and he's going to share some thoughts about his new book, New Every Morning. And so then you provide me your platform to write a little note to your people, a little thought about God's mercy. And then you send it out to your people. And then I do the same thing on mine. You know, hey, this is my new friend Jessica, and she writes books on, you know, whatever. And so it's a newsletter swap, and we're helping each other out in that way. And then a moment ago, I mentioned ideas about promoting one another's books. You know, like maybe Barbara, I promote her book in my newsletter or whatever. Maybe other promotional projects. I think there's ways to do that. For example, I'm going to the Blue Ridge Christian Mountain Writers Conference next week, and I'm taking some bookmarks from one author. He can't attend, but he's written a wonderful book on marriage. I'm going to take it and place them up there. And then I've got some business cards from an editor. He's actually my editor, one of mine. And I'm going to take them. He can't go, but I'm going to take these business cards. So I'm going to be promoting these two guys at the conference to help them out. And so I think we can help each other with promotional projects. We might can go in together and do some advertising together, kind of like what Lana, I call her Lana, it's Lana, isn't it?
Yeah.
I got a friend down here named Lana, and I call you Lana all the time. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
that's all right.
So Lana, with her Author Hub program, just working together on promotional projects. I tell you another thing, which I hate doing this. I hate it with a passion, and you can tell by the number of reviews I have or don't have. Helping each other get reviews can be so valuable. We all know how important it is to have reviews on our books. But I don't know if you're like me. I hate asking people to write a review for me. I just hate it. I do put it in my book, and there it is, you know, but it doesn't work very well. I don't have tons of reviews. Now, for my first novel, I've got quite a few reviews. My Psalms book, I think there was like 99, I think, last time I checked. But some of them, you know, like my newest devotional course, it just came out, but it's got like 17 or 18. You've really got to have a lot of reviews. It just gives you public credibility. And none of us like asking for it. So an easier way is for me to say, hey, I've got a friend named Karen McCullen, and she's, Karen McMullen. I've got a friend named Karen McMullen. She's written an awesome book, and I want to encourage you to get a copy of it, read it, and then write her a review. That would be such a blessing to her, and it would help her so much. And it doesn't feel as weird for me to be asking my people to write a review on Karen's book. And she could do the same thing with her people about my book. So we can help each other that way by promoting the idea of getting reviews. And there's probably many other things that we could do to, you know, some practical steps in writing and community, but I think those are a few that we could consider. I know I've been going for a long time, and I wonder if you have any other thoughts or comments that you'd like to that you would like to add or ask. Or questions?
Yeah. Does anyone have any questions?
So is this like a Christian-based type of writing group, Author Hub?
It is.
It is.
It does have
It
a
does have a
Christian
Christian
faith-based
faith-based
authors.
authors.
Also,
Also,
probably some other
probably some other
in the author hub
author hubs that are
possibly not Christian.
probably not Christian.
Okay, okay. No, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's good because I like how you started it off by praying. Because a lot of people that you see, even with some of this author stuff, they don't try to start it off by praying. So I was very actually glad that you did that. And so like I enjoyed like this whole session and all the different tips. And I know that I'm a first time author, and so it's good to learn different things. And I was just listening as Tim was talking about even asking people to leave reviews. Yeah, that is definitely a struggle. I just started writing in my books, you know, when I sell a book to someone and I sign it, I just ask them to please leave a review, but it's just like pulling teeth to ask people to leave a review because you have those that will and then those others that won't, and some of them may not be as tech savvy as some other people. So I try to provide like the instructions of how to go and do a review if people, you know, so wish to do a review. But if they don't do a review, I just, you know, keep it moving.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. I understand that. And I'm actually working on some stuff to add into the author hub so that we maybe have some more tools for helping with doing reviews for our books. And so I would also like to say that my audience is primarily Christian faith-based audience. It's just that there are some people that are listing their books in the author hub that may not be in the faith-based audience. But you know, I believe that as I move forward in allowing all sorts of people to be in the author hub club, whatever we want to call it, but pretty much I'm doing a hub, that it can be an opportunity to bring more people, you know, into the faith-based world.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Do we have any more
Do we have
questions?
any more questions?
And thank you,
And
Jessica.
thank you, Jessica.
Oh, you're welcome.
And I want to thank
And I want to thank
for
for
such an awesome presentation tonight. It's been, I mean, I have taken I don't know how many notes myself on learning more and more. I thought I was doing really good about learning about collaborating in community, but Tim, you brought out some really great, awesome ideas that I hadn't even thought about. And thank you for your time, your effort, and we appreciate your presentation.
Well, you're welcome. Yes.
Do you have anything else you would like to say?
I'll just say thanks for everybody being here tonight, and I think we can all learn from each other and help each other. And I know Lana, I'm sure in the future we'll have a get together again like this, and maybe we can share successes and failures and flops, and you know what went well, what didn't go well. In the future, if you want to talk about book launches, I can tell you some good things I did, and I can tell you some flops I did. I just experimented again with giving a book away for free. I vowed I would never do that again, and I just did it again. And I'll tell you that with the free books and the sales in the last month of that particular novel, yeah, I sold almost a total, and this is mostly freebies, but almost 6,000. And what happened as a result of that is I'm seeing the sales in book 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 going up significantly. And so far, I would say it's been a good experience. But I don't know, the jury is still out. I find that whenever I give a book away for free, I get worse reviews. People want to criticize me. which is crazy. They got the book for free. So why do you want to give me a 1 star, or whatever?
Yeah.
But anyway, but I think conversations like that to say what worked, what didn't work. I did a freebie. I'll tell you how that goes. Let's see if that works well.
It sounds like
So
a really
far,
good topic for the future.
I think it would be. And maybe some of you guys have some ideas on some things that have worked for you, or maybe you haven't marketed your book much and you have some questions that could kind of generate some discussion. It might even be worthwhile sharing some questions with Lana up front, and we can say, hey, let's put together a discussion on that topic. Maybe Jessica has a question about something, and it would be, that would be a great conversation to have. So let's make that the topic next time around. I think that would be excellent to just to send those into Lana, and let's figure that out for the future.
That would be great. And I probably could put together an email out to the authors and get their input, like you say, on something that they would like to see us add to another conversation sometime.
That'd be excellent. But thanks for letting me speak tonight, Lana.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm so glad we had you on our time tonight, and I'll just close this in prayer right quick. And I just want to say thank you, Lord, for this time together. We thank you for all the things that Tim has shared with us tonight. We just ask you to take this information and multiply it and grow it in the hearts of everyone here and the people that are going to watch the replay, so that we can further your kingdom with our books. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Hey, Lana, I
Yeah.
said that I would send out a copy of my notes or my PowerPoint if anyone would like it.
Yes.
My email address, let's see, I could do a chat, couldn't I? Would that show up if I
Yeah,
do chat?
you could put it in the chat, or you could also say it so that the people that watch the replay could,
All right.
because there'll be people that are, I know there's some people that have already stated that they want to watch the replay.
Right. It's my first initial is T. My last name is Riordan, which is Riordan. And then it's at gmail.com. I'm sorry, I left out something. TRiordan8 at gmail.com, the number 8. Or if you want to go to timriordan.com, you can reach me through my, the contact page. But my email is triordan8 at gmail.com.
And I could also, if you want, you'll give me a copy of the, I can put them on the website under the meeting as well, when I put the replay for the meeting on the website.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And if anybody wants a copy,
Email that to me.
I will. I offer a free Bible study book on how to study Psalms. And this is my reader magnet, by the way. This is how I get people to sign up for my newsletter. So if you go to timriordan.com, you'll see a little window will pop up and ask you if you want this free book. And so if you're interested in being on my newsletter list, you can download the free book. Just go to my website, timriordan.com, and sign up for that free book, and you'll be on my email list.
Well, and I got your the white book. I can't remember the name of it, bestseller or something, and it was very good. Thank you very much. I'm not all the way through it, but I put it on my tablet, and I have circled and underlined and highlighted, and I'm learning to read on my tablet, especially these PDFs, so that I can't do that necessarily in a Kindle, but I can write all over the PDF.
Yeah, well, that's awesome.
It's almost like having a paper book. It's like having a paper book. So it has been really good. And you're also very inspiring because you're a pastor. My husband's a pastor, so I really wish he was writing some books, but I can't seem to get him off the lawnmower right now.
I tell you what I tell pastors, you're a pastor if you've got all this material in your file and you only use it one time and then move on to the next thing. Because we do all this research and study on sermons, we preach it one time, shelf life is just done, and we move on to the next thing. So if you could put that in a book, like that's what I do in my Psalms book. It sells all around the world. It's had a huge impact through the years. I had no idea that God would use it that way, and it was just a sermon series that I preach. So, or sort of. Anyway, so that's awesome.
All right.
Yeah, I
Well,
didn't get that free book. I'm gonna do that.
good. So does anybody else have any more questions? Barbara?
No questions. This was just very, very helpful and re-energizing. And I do need to order a copy, Tim, of your book, The Best-Selling Tips. So thank you so much just for sharing tonight. I really did get a lot out of today's.
Awesome. Hey, I'll tell you one thing I also tell people is I never want, if someone would like to have a copy of any of my books for free, I'm always happy to give them away. I don't ever want the fact that I have to, that, you got to go to Amazon and buy it. I don't want that to ever be a barrier to somebody. So if you got a writing friend who's like, man, I really need to work on that, but I'm just struggling right now, buying an extra book is just beyond me. Just reach out to me. I'm always happy to send it as a gift.
Well, everyone
Well,
knows.
God bless you and good night.
Yes, thank you very much. We really appreciate your
All
help.
right. Thanks, everyone.
All right, thanks everyone. Have a great night.
Yeah,
All right.
y'all take care.
Have a good
All
night.
right.
I'm